It's early signing day, and Oklahoma didn't have, or at least it didn't feel like they had any drama going on today. It felt good not to have any drama. Oklahoma gets all 27 commits signed in the early signing period. So now you get an opportunity to get all your early enrollees on campus, look forward to the spring game, and get ahead of the SEC. But today, I've got Cooper from Unfair Sports joining me. We're going to break down this early signing period and talk about maybe some of the prospects that we're more excited to see. What's going on? How are you doing today?
Man, just doing good. It's I'm not gonna lie, like I just, with a lot of conversations having out, there was not really any drama, and I slept okay. I slept late, and but yeah, you get excited because you see the talent and the character that's coming in. And as we were talking off screen, even the PWOs give you something to be excited about. So if you are a Sooner fan, you go 27 for 27. You can't do much better than that, right?
Can't do much better than that. Hey, at least we're not Florida.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are imploding right
Yeah.
now. They had a top 5 class, and now they're in the top 15. Like that's yeah. It's not
As
good
of
out there.
now.
Florida,
Yeah.
check up on a local Florida fan if you have one. But for
Yeah.
Oklahoma, we got to start with the defensive side of the ball because all off season, all during the season, the entirety of talk around recruiting was David Stone, Williams Winery,
Yeah.
Dominic McKinley, all of these 5-star defensive linemen, and it's one that you haven't gotten in a while. And Oklahoma now signs in 2 consecutive periods a 5-star defensive player, which I'm trying to think of the last time that happened. It's probably before I really got into football, and I think I got into football in 2007. And to be honest, I didn't care about recruiting until Lincoln Riley got here, and Lincoln Riley made it exciting. So, what are some of your initial thoughts just around the defensive side of the ball in this recruiting class?
Uh, I mean, for more than 2 decades, we've struggled on the defensive line. I mean, to be honest, the last time that you were really excited about a potential defensive line haul was right before the old who bounced out west. Because at that point you had Gabe Dindy, you had Marvin Jones Jr., who looks like both of these guys will probably be on the transfer portal this year. But you had those guys, and that was like the last time that you really were too excited about the defensive line, incoming. So it's crazy because with guys like Nigel Smith and Danny Okoye and David Stone, you forget about some of the other cats like Wyatt Gilmore, and you forget about Mr. Jackson, who's been playing right next to David. And so you just got to be pretty jazzed for who's coming in. It's a position of need. We need the good veteran leadership that we've got on the team coming back with these young, talented pups. And if you watch that All-American game that Okoye played in, dude just balled out. And when I say balled out, he didn't have like a really cool play. It was, I mean, after another. And people were starting to notice him outside of this area. So the defensive line, it just looks great. You're excited that all these guys are also going to be coming in early to start their training. You've got guys like X-Rob, who's already trying to come practice with the team for bowl. No, they cannot play, so we can't see David Stone in the bowl game or anything like that. But they can get some of this practice in with the team if they're available to. So what's not to like about that?
What's not to like about it? And I look at this defensive line class, and it's funny that you mentioned Marvin Jones Jr. because I don't know if you got a chance to watch the interview with Jaden Davis over on, I believe it's the Momentum podcast, but he talked about it. On Lincoln Riley's departure, they canceled Marvin Jones' official visit to Oklahoma. So you can only ask yourself what could have been if, he was committed and Brent Venables came into this class. He might be on campus for Oklahoma. But no, I look at it and I say this is an exciting class. And although you don't land some of the prospects that we looked at the very beginning of the year during class predictions, like a Peyton Pierce, and we were like, I think a lot of us were dead set on this kid's going to be in a Sooner uniform, and then he takes one visit to Ohio State, and it's like, going there. You look at Williams Nwaneri, ended up at Mizzou. For a long time, we always thought this kid's going to flip. And then I think just reality hit us in the face. It's not happening. Now, Oklahoma, though, they're not done. I mean, there's still opportunity for them to land more guys. Like we look at Dalen Evans, who's came out and said, hey, I want to take an official visit to Oklahoma, who Todd Bates I have a great relationship with, Texas and USC. And then not to mention Dominic McKinley. That whole saga, it just never ends. And if you're Oklahoma, you feel really good about him not signing his national letter of intent today. You feel that puts Oklahoma in a good position. So I feel like there's still potential for this class. You can still add on to it a little bit, but BV alluded to it in his press conference today. You know, you get these 27 guys here. I think it was, he said 14 on offense, 13 on defense. Now, obviously, I think he's talking about just scholarship guys. He's not talking about the PWOs, because you look at Bergen Kaisar on the defensive line and guys like that. Those are going to be guys that come in and challenge maybe some of these out-of-state kids to be better. And you never know. Sometimes these PWOs just show up and they're absolute dudes. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to finally have a 5-star defensive lineman on the field. Now Oklahoma just doesn't need to screw it up, and they need to turn this 5-star defensive lineman into a first-round pick so that we can get more of them like the Georgias and the Bamas. And I'm not going to say Texas A&M, because Texas A&M, they didn't do anything with their first-rounders that they supposedly got anyway. So shifting over to the offensive side of the ball, I think I told you about this in the green room. There's a guy that's actually probably flown under the radar outside of his commitment that a lot of people forgotten about. And we actually had to do some digging because we kind of forgot about him a little bit. But Jacob Jordan out of South Lake Carroll High School.
South Lake Carroll.
He's a PWO, 3-star kid though. And he's a guy that's had tremendous production in high school. Over 2,200 yards, 143 receptions, 26 touchdowns. And you look at that wide receiver room for Emmett Jones, it's absolutely stacked. He adds to it again with Zion Kearney. You get Raggins, you get Carry On. So what's your thoughts about the offensive side of the ball?
Don't worry about things. It's crazy. What do we have? All 27 locked up before 11:30. The Taylor Tatum situation got people a little jazzed up, but it ended up being a big nothing, right? The offensive line is one that you want to have a conversation with, because the offensive line, we didn't have a very good crop of recruits, here regionally, and a couple of people that we made pushes for, like Grant Bricks, didn't go our way. But obviously Beanball closes out with EPL the other day, and that's great because he is a freak of nature. I went to go get my new tires on my truck earlier today, and guy recognized me and was like, "Hey, you're the guy from the podcast." And the first person he mentions was EPL and him running that race. I think it was a 100. So that just, people are excited about that. You throw in Tatum, like you said, you brought up the Zion Kearney. He is a humongous frame, right? You have Carry On, who is another humongous frame at potentially 6'7". Michael Hawkins has done nothing but go to a traditionally untraditional new school this year. Dude balled out. So if you're like, he's one of the people that now I'm gaining so much excitement for, because the last time that most Sooner fans saw him was when they played Denton Guyer last year, and Jackson Arnold and that team had their way with them. And that's still when he was at Allen. So now he's totaled up 50 touchdowns. There we go. Here's if you have not seen this, the guy on the bottom is EPL, and this is not like some weird setup downtown for taco nights. There's no midget wrestling. That's normal size human beings running against him, and it just looks silly. If you beat EPL and you're one of those other guys, you just don't say much. You just keep on running because you don't want to, irritate. He might eat you.
And he's strong too. And he's strong too.
That too, because I think that I saw on the bench press, he did several reps, and he would have ranked 13th overall in the NFL Combine as an 18-year-old. So
25 reps at 225 pounds.
Yeah, I mean that's not real life, right? Devon Mitchell is another person. You know, we have not seen a great tight end commitment since Mark Andrews. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. Anybody else? Zion Ragans. If you don't know much about him, he is lightning in a bottle, and that is going to be a big piece too. And so, and then you're not even talking about people like Boganowski or Jeremiah Newcomb, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. Devin Jordan, who's a guy out of here from Union. Eli Bowen. You can go through all this stuff, and then obviously X-Rob, Xavier Robinson. I'm just excited to see what does he look like when he gets in and has decent blocking out in front of him and just insane weapons all around him. Is that somebody that as a 180 pound 5'10" cornerback, you want to come up and put your helmet in the middle of him? We saw in all of his clips of him just picking up and throwing folks. I think I made a comment right before we went live. My daughter was bouncing a ball outside, and I said, I'm gonna throw you, but I really can't pick up my daughter and throw her. X-Rob, he throws football players. Like that's that is it. I'd like to see X-Rob do the shot put against Brock Lesnar's daughter, who looks like a female Brock Lesnar. But I digress. It's just good stuff. We have so much talent, and this is what you got to do. The next step on the talent pool, offense and defense, is you start looking at a year or two down the road. This is 3 really good hauls back to back, and we don't have much left on the roster that was mismanaged from Lincoln and his crew. So now you've got a lot of Brent Venables guys in here. You've seen the progress. We have veteran leadership coming back to help these guys learn the systems. If you are worried about the SEC, don't be worried about the SEC. This is a team that's getting put together the way Brent Venables wants it. He's seeing what it takes to compete at the level needed. And so this is a pretty cool launching pad going into the SEC.
Yeah, and I look at the offensive line because I know that has been the topic of conversation for Oklahoma fans. And I even kind of ask myself, did we do enough, right? Like, did we get enough? And are any of these guys going to come in and make an immediate impact? I do think EPL probably has a fighting chance at starting for you because, I mean, I only think he probably needs the summer with Schmitty, and he's probably already good enough to be able to get on that offensive line. I mean, look at Caden Green. He comes in and makes 7 starts for you this season. So, I mean, if Caden Green can do it, EPL can do it. I do wonder, though, what Josh Isosa and Eugene Brooks and Isaiah Autry are going to turn into you for, because, I mean, you didn't land the Grant Bricks, who was a guy that I think we looked at and said, that's going to be a guy that you can come in and plug in day one. You didn't go out there and land the Bennett Warrens and the kid that ended up at LSU that was committed to A&M that Oklahoma was in for early. So I know the offensive line will be at question, but 2025, I think that's really going to be the cream of the crop. I think that's where Bill Bedenbaugh looks at it and says, we're going to focus all of our attention to that class, because you've got so many kids out of the state of Texas, not even just in the state of Texas, the Dallas area. And you got kids out of Bishop Gorman, where you've recruited well out as of late. So I wouldn't say fans need to panic yet. We'll evaluate offensive line recruiting after 2025. Let's get through the entire 2025 cycle. But I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty satisfied with this class. I think you're going to give Jackson Arnold quite a few weapons. You brought up Zion Ragans, who a lot of people have alluded to. Is it just a Marquise Brown 2.0? You guys remember him? He was an absolute stud for Kyler Murray. And I think you pair him with Jackson Arnold, and Jackson Arnold throws the ball, the deep ball, very well. I think you could see a similar situation where, hey, it could be like a Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown matchup. And then you look at Taylor Tatum, a guy that's going to be a 2-sport athlete, and he's going to play baseball, but an absolute dynamic running back. Pair him with Xavier Robinson. I think you get everything you want. This is a pretty solid class for Oklahoma. You got a lot of physicality and a lot of speed in this class.
Yeah, and here's one other thing is you've got guys who need the summer program with Schmitty, and they're going to be ready to roll. Then you've got guys who are going to have massive physical frames and know what they're walking into from a coaching's perspective, and so they're going to come in and get the coaching that they need. I mean, some of these programs, some of the guys are coming from, and high school football has made leaps and bounds to catch up with, what is needed in college here more recently. But there's a lot of these guys who are coming in from places that they've never had the nutrition that they're going to have at Oklahoma. They've never had the workout program. They've never had the facilities. And so all of those things are there. We have gone to bat for Emmett Jones. Like, this guy continues just to pull talent from absolutely everywhere. The wide receiver room and probably the defensive back room are the two places right now to where you look at both of those places. And when you have that much talent, people who are super talented aren't going to see the field. And that's one thing that you have to start preparing yourself, because, people are like, what's going on at Georgia? What's going on at Alabama, as these, top 100 in the 21 class, top, 55 in the 22 class guys are leaving. It's because when you have that much talent inbound, you push talent back out the backside too, of guys who have not turned into something. Because, I'll backtrack and say, Oklahoma has got all kinds of guys in the past who were like an RJ Washington, who was a 5-star defensive end, and he just took 4 years to turn into something. You got to get guys who have a plan in front of them, and they trust the coaching staff long enough to stick around, not go through this year and go, wow, I got to play in 3 games and then I had to bounce. I do think that us having the SEC, late year bye week of Maine, 3 weeks from the end of the season is super interesting, because you can get guys some playing time later in the year and see what they're worth. Whereas, in the Big 12, we haven't had that capability. You haven't been able to throw out, guys who haven't played, 11 games into the season. And so, it's a good opportunity for some of these guys to come in, get a season underneath their belt. And I might be talking about, no offense to any single recruit, but, look at maybe Josh Iasosa. He is a guy who I think he has the frame to be an absolute freaking stud, but he's a guy who needs to get some work in. And so what if you give him 10 weeks into the season and he's got all this practice time, all this work in, and then you throw him in against a Maine and see what he can do? Like, that excites me. Also, you've got guys who I think, like, Zion Kearney, Nigel Smith, David Stone, Jaden Jackson. These guys can walk in and show what they've got right now. IMG as a development academy is known for that. So I'm kind of rambling right now, but you've got a lot to be excited about, and we get to uncover, how good some of these guys are. We haven't mentioned a guy like Reggie Powers, who's at the bottom of the screen right there. That's a guy who in most programs walks in and buys for a starting job day one. Well, you walk in with this defensive back room, and you just got to, partner yourself up with a Billy Bowen, or somebody who's been around for a while, and just hope to God that you can learn as much as you can from them. So when it is your time, whether it's an injury, whether it's a late season game against Maine, that you get in and you show out.
Yeah. Now, for Reggie Powers, this one's interesting to me because this was kind of a late addition for Oklahoma, right after the Michigan State head coach got fired, and you kind of to see their class kind of crumble a little bit. Reggie Powers was a guy that I think a lot of people expect, he can play safety, but maybe to come in and even challenge Sammy Omosigo, who I think is the future of the cheetah position, right? I think a lot of people expect him to maybe come in and try to play that. What is your thoughts there around his capabilities to come in and try to play cheetah?
I mean, you've got Harrington, which still is working on the medical waiver. So, he's got the opportunity. If you've got Peyton Bowen, who says, like, Peyton Bowen or Robert Spears Jennings and Billy Bowman, like those are three guys that you want on the field as much as possible. So how does that look with Dasan McCullough? Does he stay there, or do we start seeing him, take more linebacker snaps, maybe a defensive end set? You don't know. So I would say this: if you're Brent Venables, Jay Valai, you've got so many interchangeable pieces that you can have a Peyton. Listen, the Cheetah. You've got a Peyton Bowen, a Samuel Omasigo. You've got a Reggie Powers. You've got Dasan McCullough, Justin Harrington. You've got so many guys who can slide over into that spot. And why that's frustrating and infuriating for opposing coaches is you may see a Peyton Bowen line up at safety, and then he slides down in a Cheetah spot. You may see a Dasan McCullough line up in the Cheetah and then slide over and rush and blitz the passer. So you've got some flexibility with these guys, and I think that's who Brent Venables was going after is David Stone or Nigel Smith a guy that you can line up on the inside or the outside. What if you could throw in an R. Mason Thomas, a PJ Adebaware, and then a Nigel Smith all on the line at the same times, or a James Nestor or something like that. And now you have no idea who's what. You got speed rushers galore. You see in the NFL all the time where they take, a Myles Garrett and slide him inside, or they take somebody else, Aaron Donald, and they slide him on the outside. So it makes it tougher because you can have so many different looks out of one single set. And so guys like Reggie Powers bring that to you.
Now, what's your take on David Stone? And I'm going to say Nigel Smith. I know some people will ask about Jaden Jackson, but I think for nose tackle, I think we're good this season. You might see Jaden Jackson here and there, but what's your thoughts about Nigel Smith and David Stone? Do we see them play the interior at all this upcoming season? I mean, I feel like we will see David Stone.
Yeah, and David Stone's going to do that. Listen. He says Jaden Jackson is the best defensive lineman he's ever played with, and he says he's one of the best in the nation. So is that propping up your buddy, or is that legitimate? We'll get a chance to see it, because I promise you, we need to up the pass rush from the interior. It's not our defensive line didn't do a horrible job this year. They did. I mean, they did exactly what I hoped they would do, was just don't be a detriment or a liability to the team. So now you've got a Jaden Jackson who can come in, and again, the first 3 games of the season, they look really, really good. You can bring him in and see what you got. Spring game is going to be a pretty freaking a good spectacle here this year, because everybody's going to want to see all these cats. Everybody's going to want to see all these guys, on the defensive line. I would caution and say, remember, most of these guys during the spring game should have been in a high school classroom. So don't lose your mind if Nigel Smith doesn't have 5 sacks, off the edge in the spring game. But don't be surprised if you start hearing rumblings early in the season that Jaden Jackson's vying for playing time, and he is trying to unseat anybody else in the middle of that line.
Now, when it comes to the defensive line and the nose tackle position, which I think is where you're going to see Jaden Jackson in the future, I would assume Dejon Terry's probably going to have that locked up this next season. And I feel like we're going to see more out of him next season because, correct me if I'm wrong, he came in after the spring, right?
Who was that?
Dejon Terry?
Yeah. I believe that it was after the spring. I think it was him and Brennan Thompson both were guys that came in after the spring game.
Yeah, so I would expect we're probably going to see a little bit more out of Dejon Terry this year, and I would assume he's probably going to lock up that nose tackle position.
Yeah,
and yeah. I mean, you're right. If Jaden Jackson is as good as he's made out to be by David Stone, we're probably going to see him there. Now, kind of going back to the running back position a little bit with Taylor Tatum intrigues me a little bit because he's going to be a two-way athlete. I believe he's going to be playing baseball for Oklahoma, I think, right away. Does Taylor Tatum see a lot of action in his first year or maybe even 2 years at Oklahoma? Or is he kind of one of those guys where you kind of plug him in when he's needed, but you're already so deep at the running back room that, You don't burn his red shirt the first year.
I feel like before this year, I'd answered this question completely differently. I say this is the biggest issue. There was a symbiotic relationship with the flux on the offensive line and the flux with the running back room. And I got to think that, like the clock management last year, that's something that is a major point of emphasis on, having conversations about is, hey, listen, I understand what you guys are trying to do on the offensive line and at the running back room, but if we have a moving target, it's hard to gauge who's doing what. That running back room, just in general, outside of Sawchuk late in the season, I mean, if you're DeMarco Murray coaching how it seems that he coaches, I think that you look at your entire room and you say, the best guy's going to play. Let's get out there and show me who that person is. And you go out because, I mean, is there anything to the fact that you've got, and we still have an opportunity for a little muscle hamster to return, Tolby Walker, so it's not a done deal yet with there. So, I mean, who do you have? You have Sawchuk, you have Walker, you have Javante Barnes, who's at this point is the forgotten man. You still have Megwa, who is another guy who can just come in and hurt folks. You've got X-Rob coming in and then Tatum. So with all those guys, you have that opportunity to come in and take the job. I don't think that DeMarco says, hey, listen, Sawchuk is our starter from the get-go, and now I'm looking for who's going to fall in rotation. I think that he opens it up and he says, all right, the best people come out here and play. And that pushes everybody because you don't want to be the sixth person on the chain. Now, home run ability and making a guy miss are two things that we struggle mightily with. As great as Tolby Walker is, he's not making folks miss unless it's out in the open field and he's just pushing them out, into the ground like he's, planting a garden. So that's going to be something that we see is if Taylor Tatum can come in, because he's not going to be here until July. So he is going to get summer and he's going to get the fall camp, and that's going to be it. Everybody else is going to have from here till then, as a head start for him. But if he can come in and he can pick up the blitz protections, he can pick up that portion of it, and he shows the ability to make people miss, he plays. If he does, come in and he's a little behind on everybody, then we see him maybe focusing more on baseball because, I mean, he's not walking into a chump room on either side of either sport. This is we're going to be fighting for the playoffs in football this year, and the baseball team is going to be fighting to go to Omaha. So you've got he's got a lot to focus on. Does he have less to focus on than a Kyler Murray? Sure, he does, because he's not the quarterback of the team. But learning protections and then seeing what his abilities are, this guy's a freak of nature. I mean, there's a reason why everybody in the world wanted him. And before USC, to quote Dennis Green, they thought they are who we thought they were. Before that, I mean, he was the most sought after running back in the nation. And you're going to remember where you were when he announced Oklahoma. You're going to remember the week leading up to it when we were all, hiding out in the green room saying, what's going to happen here? So running back room is just going to need to continue to push kind of how they did it late in the season. Hopefully we don't have another, situation that we had this year.
I don't think you're going to have that, because I think you've got a couple of different options with Sam Franklin coming in. I know people aren't super hot on that, but hey, listen, yeah. I think Sam Franklin.
I forget about Sam Franklin too.
I think he's going to be a dude. I think he's going to be an option. And then I think Javante Barnes will be healthy. I think he'll be ready to go for next season. But as we're looking at this class, just what are some of your closing thoughts on either what Oklahoma could add or just, what they do have?
I'll reiterate it and I'll try to make it shorter, is multiplicity with guys like Boganowski, Nesta, Eli Bowen. There's so many of these guys that have just freak measurables that, it just, you get excited about them. So we're building pieces. You got to have people who are going to push. The backups have to push the starters to work harder. If you're sitting there as the starter and you look behind you and there's a bunch of guys who probably are never going to see the field, you're going to have some complacency. I think that's the challenge of the SEC and the schedule that, it's probably posted up in the locker room already. It's time to get to work. It's time for these guys to go in. Brent Venables has shown that whether it's the transfer portal or recruiting, he wants high character guys who want to come here and play football and become better men. And you look at what's going on with around the country with guys like Jordan Seaton, DJ Lagway, who have been committed now to multiple. I mean, he's signed now, but Dylan Raiola, that guy's name has been attached to 4 or 5 different teams. And we don't have that. We can just focus on football. We know who's going to be here. After the bowl games, we're still going to have more opportunities in the transfer portal. There's a lot of fun fan favorite names that are still going to start popping up. So be happy with this. Focus on our football team. Get off of Twitter. Stop digging at nobodies. If a homeless guy, looked at your phone over your shoulder and said, man, that's a really, really crappy idea as far as your investments, I would tell him to piss off because he has no point of reference. That's the same thing with arguing with mid-tier programs that have not done a thing since the 30s or the 60s or whatever. Stop arguing. Just be excited about what we got and who we have leading us. That is my major plea. Plus, it's time to get behind these guys. I think Danny Okoye is doing his physical signing tomorrow. So I'll be tracking that one with my man, Monty Cisco. So we're going to go up there and see him. There's more signings going on, I think, down in the Oklahoma City area. So it's time for Sooner Nation to rally around these new guys and start showing them love, start showing the guys who came back the love, because let's focus on what we've got going, because we've got a lot of cool things that are coming down the pike.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that like and you guys hit that subscribe button, because 2025 is here, and Oklahoma's already had a pretty hot start to that class, and I'm curious to see how this year's going to go. We're not going to be rolling into June and everybody be complaining about, I think, the recruits that we have, because I think that class will be pretty full by June. So, Cooper, where can everybody find yours and Jay's content at?
Yeah, check us out, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, whatever, Unfair Sports. Jay and I try to keep up. We're part of the content collective that we've got, and joining PG is always great. Thanks, man, for having me on here. I know the Jason Hall of Fame, Horns Down podcast with K. Chris, Travis and JP. There's so many good guys to follow. And I think one of the cool things is we just want to talk football. We're not. We do all of our predicting and on Discord quietly and messages between us. But if you just want to hear who we've got, what we've got going on, check us out there.
Yes, check them out.